Good morning. Great to see everybody. Thank you, Dr. Frazier, for inviting me. I'm honored to be here, especially to be with the distinguished other speakers who are the distinguished ones this morning. I like to brag that I signed up to support the Texas Center so early that Dr. Frazier didn't know what to do with my check. And I say brag because the mission of the Texas Center is exactly what Texas needs at this point in our history. Don called for a reintroduction, so I want to tell you a couple of things that I've done in my life, and I'm making a point that you will see in a minute. I am on the 14th Court of Appeals. I'm in my 19th year as a judge in this state. I was born and raised in Houston and had the good fortune to be able to run around on land near Montgomery, Texas, that my physician ancestor owned. He settled in Houston in 1836 and ended up settling in Montgomery because Houston was such a rough place. In fact, he appears in one of Dr. Hardin's books, and he too fled Houston in its early days. So I had a little bit of a rural upbringing. I also got to be, I went to Texas A&M, and I was on the rodeo team, as all kids who grew up on the west side of Houston are, right? And then I got out of law school, thank goodness, and went to work for John Hill at Liddell Sapp, where I learned about politics. And I learned where the Capitol building, where the hallways of the Capitol led. And Governor Perry put me on the district court bench, and I began immediately working on legislation on behalf of the judges, which I've done every session since 2003. And Josh can attest that the bug bites you, and you learn a lot about people, forming those relationships in the legislature. Through all of that, Texas history has been a love of mine. And I was consuming Texas history from a very young age, as many of us have. But what I learned through those specific experiences that I mentioned, driving all over the state, pulling a horse trailer, walking around the Capitol with someone who had been Attorney General and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, trying to influence policy, what I learned was Texas history is directly relevant to Texas present. And it's useful. And I had never thought about that. I was not a history major. I realized that it's useful. And by knowing just a little bit about Texas history, I could be more effective in what I chose to do. And I'm here to tell you that by knowing a little bit about Texas history and understanding it, you can be more effective in what you choose to do. And that's an important life lesson that I've learned, which has made heroes to me out of guys like Don Frazier, Steve Hardin, Bruce Wenders, and others. Texas history is important, it's useful, and it's critical to the future. Now, I was asked to comment on the people of Texas. I think that Texas has a lot of people, right? More arriving every day from strange foreign lands like California. I love this topic because after almost 20 years on the bench and running for election 6 times, I think I have met and know a little bit about Texans, and I've got a feel for it. Josh pointed out, and I've heard Dr. Frazier say the same thing, Texas is really a tough place to come make a go of it. If you were going to settle a place, Texas is probably not your first choice. Just think about the challenges just of the geography, as Josh mentioned, the rivers, the weather. We had the other day, last week, blizzards, floods, tornadoes, all in one day. All in our state. The sun, the temperature, coming here and making a go of it took a certain type of person. So think about what kind of person would leave the civilization of the United States or wherever they came from, Germany, England, everywhere, and come to a place like Texas. Well, it's somebody that's tough, obviously. It's somebody that loves and craves freedom. And it's also someone who's ingenious. Now, I went to A&M, so I had to look this up, but ingenious doesn't mean smart necessarily. It means clever. It means you figure out a way to get something done. Isn't that the story of Texas? You figure out a way to get something done and what needs to be done. It takes a brave person. It takes somebody with courage, not that you're not scared, but that you face it and you overcome it. That's who settled Texas. And when you repeat that millions of times over generations, when you repeat that person, You create a character, and you create a spirit, and that's the spirit of Texas. And it's a spirit that resides in our people. And people of that spirit attract more people of that spirit. And that spirit is rewarded incredibly. If you have that character and that spirit and those traits, you are rewarded, and Texas will reward you and has rewarded all of us. Think about the things that this state has produced. Think about the things this state has invented. The integrated circuit, the Patillo Higgins thinking, you know what, I want to punch a hole in the ground down here because there's a little depression over here outside of Beaumont. Change the world. The man on the moon, that mission was controlled from Texas, and now the private space industry, which are three words I never thought I'd utter in succession, is headquartered right here in Texas. Isn't that something? The Spirit built the state, and the Spirit is going to keep the state great. But you know what? That spirit will atrophy if you don't tend it and don't cultivate it. We're in a very difficult time culturally in our country. It's a time where we need to protect the spirit of Texas. And we do that by taking it to the people where that spirit lies. We teach them what built this state, and by doing so, we show them how to keep this straight, us, not them, us, show ourselves how to keep this state great. And that's where a place like the Texas Center can be so valuable. History is the story of people. And when I talk about this spirit of Texas, and I talk about educating people on the spirit of Texas and preserving it, I'm really talking about Texas history. That's what I'm talking about. And we will face challenges in the next few years. We need to heal this country from the culture that we're in. It's poisonous in my judgment. We need to actively shed any attempts to divide us. Texas is not immune from that, by the way. We're going to have to accommodate the era that we're in. We're in an era of growth. We've seen that many times before in Texas. We're in a growth period. We're going to need food, energy, housing, water. Those are all issues, and we're going to take care of that. We always have, and we will again. But to succeed in the efforts to do so, we will need to do what we're best at as Texans, and that's coming together to meet almost any challenge. That's what we're really good at. And the roadmap to that success lies in our history. Our history is that story. That's why I study it. That's why I write about it. That's why I talk about it. That's why I teach it at a similar-sized school to Schreiner in Houston. That's why I podcast it. The Texas Center will play a significant role in this process, and I'm honored to be a part of it. I sign off every one of my podcast episodes with the following phrase and a little bit of an admonition: go out and do something for Texas today. So I'm not saying you have to dedicate your professional career and pretty much all your spare time to Texas. I'm not asking you to do that, but I am asking you to ask yourself, what are you doing for Texas? What will you do for Texas? What are you willing to do for Texas? But I'll tell you, being here today, it's a pretty darn good start. Thank you very much for inviting me, Dr. Frazier, and I look forward to meeting everybody over the course of the day.